Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our practice edition where we take improvements we made throughout the week and tie them back to lean principles. I am Uriel Eisen.
And I am Devin Bedoni.
And you've got a quote.
We learn from failure because they reveal boundaries in our system's capability and horizons in our minds. From Toyota Kata.
It's a good one. Before we jump into that, we dropped a Patreon last week. Thanks all for checking it out. If anyone wants to go join that would be much appreciated. We are kind of coming up with,
Some schemes. Way to spend all of your money.
Exactly. Something like that.
In a way that would hopefully be fun for everyone.
Yeah, and like feedback into the community, hopefully.
Yeah.
So anyway, go check it out. The link will be in the description. Back to the quote. I think that's, pretty solid.
Did you, sorry, this is maybe airing your dirty laundry, but we were on the phone yesterday. And
Oh, my gem?
And you had some gems.
I had a gem yesterday.
Yeah. What, did you figure it out? Do you want to tell us what it was?
Yeah, so basically I wrote it down to discuss. The CNC mill, which has been running parts happily for months, decided to dump all of the parts out of the back of the machine, half machined yesterday. We caught it after one cycle, so that was 24 parts. Kind of frustrating to waste 24 parts, but not a huge deal. Like, our parts are pretty small.
Yes, we learned from failure.
Hopefully. But then going to the front of the machine, I was like, all right, why is this happening? And could not figure it out. I had a couple ideas, and then I was sort of trying to troubleshoot it. And then at some point I looked at the fingers and they were pretty damaged, but I had looked at them earlier and didn't notice the damage. And I was like, did I damage them in troubleshooting, or were they damaged and I just failed to notice? But it was enough damage that I think I would have noticed. But now, so I printed another set, but I have no ideas as to why.
You don't know what the root cause was.
Don't know what the root cause was.
Interesting.
So that is on the list for today.
Huh.
It did start happening after we switched out to new gripper fingers. So, but they look just like the old ones, and the tolerances aren't that tight. There's quite a bit of movement on them. So if it's a little off one way or the other.
Weird. Wait, so when it happened, those were fresh fingers that got damaged during that time, or it was old fingers?
Fresh fingers went into the machine. Then the machine dropped the parts, didn't successfully complete the flip and back into the vise.
Interesting.
In watching it, it looked like, we saw a few failures. One of them, it looked almost like the part was sticking, the gripper would open and then wrap it up out of away from the vise, but the part would stick a little, so the part would sort of fly up a little bit and then just land somewhere. Sometimes on the vise, sometimes next to the vise. I couldn't really figure out if there was anything sticky. I also noticed a pretty massive burr. We clean up the sides of the top hat on op 1 to be able to grab something consistent in the flip station. And there was a huge burr, which is new, I think. Anyway. So some challenges, and definitely gonna have a look at it today and try to get to the bottom of it.
Curious.
Oh, we also switched the plastic that we're printing with from PLA to PETG. And I can't really think of a reason why that would cause this failure, but it could. It could be.
It's one of the few things that changed.
Yeah. So, gonna do some hard looking today.
I know that PETG is stronger, right?
PETG, I believe.
Or is it just less brittle?
I think it's less brittle. I don't know what the tensile strength or yield strength are like. I think your stress strain curves are different. PLA, I think, is a little more rigid, but then will shatter.
Yeah.
And then the hope with PETG is that it just holds up better in the coolant, and then we don't get like, what was that called? The environmental something cracking?
Yeah, environmental stress cracking.
Something like that, yeah. So I'm hoping it holds up to the coolant and doesn't start cracking.
I wonder if it was a little softer, if it was just deforming from, or just like wearing in a way that...
It could be that. It was literally
so
the first
fast.
24 parts. So
that's weird.
Yeah, so it could be that. I did revisit the idea, which I really like. I've been messing around with 3D printing more and like trying to make it into something very useful rather than, or very, very useful rather than just very useful. And I think a lot of it has to do with, anyway, my thought for the grippers, I think we've talked about this, is to put hardened dowel pins into the plastic so that your contact points are hardened. Because I think that would, anyway, just result in a much more reliable kind of position.
Yeah.
Like your PSI, I think, is the big issue with those gripper fingers. You have like high PSI where they're contacting and like just friction, and I don't know. Anyway, so I feel like that could result in like, it's a 3D printed object where we insert pins and
or even like serrated gripper bits or something.
Okay, I just had a weird idea. What if you 3D printed or even machined gripper jaws that were just riddled with holes, and then you just threaded pins into them that stuck down different lengths for your
various things?
Yeah, so like,
there's a new product that I just saw on Instagram. I think it's someone in Europe called Gimbal, maybe.
Yeah.
They're making a gripper with, and that's kind of their finger concept, is like a flat plate.
Oh, true.
That comes out to the side, and then you screw pins into that at your different widths.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so that was sort of my thought there. But I have to say the 3D printed production tooling is huge. And it's huge for a few reasons I'm seeing. I went to this auction last week.
Yep.
Very cool to see. Talk to one of the production engineers there, who designed a bunch of the assembly tooling, which was pretty cool.
What did they make?
I have no idea. Something with electronics.
Yeah.
But they, it was cool to see like how a quote unquote real company builds assembly fixtures, and like there's some pretty complex assembly tools with different like validation, like a lot of sensing, a lot more safety features.
Yeah.
Which I have to say made me well, I'm mostly using manual presses instead of pneumatic presses.
Yeah.
And there's something really nice about them. Like if you're squishing your finger, stop pulling on the lever, right? Like, I don't know. Obviously, it's different if you like slip on something. And anyway, there's like, yeah. But when you move to a production tool, you have a lot of time and money invested in that thing. Whereas if it's a 3D printed tool, you can cut it, you can modify it. Like it just feels way easier to iterate.
Yeah.
You just have like less invested in a particular thing. This is really top of mind because we've been working a lot on our sewing. And again, like you can get tools, like you send a sample of something you want sewn.
Yeah.
There's shops around the US that basically take it, make you a fixture that will hold those parts, write you a program that sews on that fixture, send it all to you, and it's like whatever, between $500 and $5,000 depending on how many stages of clamping and this and that. We're 3D printing all of that, and I could imagine if we got a shop to do it for us, we'd just keep using it, and then it would start wearing, or you'd get this issue and you're like, okay, well, let's stick some tape on that, it's fine, it's good enough. Anyway, so,
and it also, this kind of comes back to a concept from the Toyota Kata book of kind of like the development curve and what's appropriate for what aspects of the curve. And I think we often think like they were using it in terms of like manual assembly line, semi-automatic and automatic assembly lines. They're automated. And like at the beginning of the development curve on a new product, you should probably do a manual assembly line because a lot of things are going to need to change. Similarly, as you're developing production tooling, 3D printing is probably the way to go. And then there's probably some point in that curve where you're going to say, okay, this isn't changing anymore.
Right.
And maybe it is cheap to 3D print,
just like once a week or once a month
replacements, but it's still a disruption. And
Yeah.
at that point, we're like, okay, maybe it's going to change once a year at this point. It's going to wear out once a year anyway. On a machined version, we're going to switch to machining this for,
Yeah.
whatever reliability, whatever the case may be. And I think it's important to keep that mindset of like things on this curve and appropriate technology for appropriate aspects of the process.
For sure. I've worked with a lot of small companies, and I think people treat it as this big threshold of like there's the prototyping phase and then there's the production phase.
Mm-hmm.
And in the prototyping phase, there's a lot of emphasis on like what is our target cost of goods? What is our, like, let's get a quote from these people and let's get a quote from those people. Oh, wow, that's going to be too expensive. Okay, can we drive the cost down? Can we do this and that? And that leads, I think, often to people launching in a way that's sort of not appropriate.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's it comes from a good place of like wanting to make sure your product is viable, but
yeah, like you need to know
cart before the horse.
Totally. And I think a lot of it has to do with not giving enough credence to like what you'll learn in producing it. So it's like, oh, wow, if we did this all automated, our cost of goods would be super low. And so you see, and this happens all the time, different companies, Tesla comes to mind, who decided they'd build the Gigafactory, right? And have a full automated line. And I think Elon Musk said something like, I've undervalued humans, or humans are actually pretty useful, or something along those lines. And not to say that a fully automated line isn't still maybe the goal.
Right.
But it's just to say that when you're starting to assemble, I mean, I have to say, getting in cars, after I've been making these buckles and having production challenges with a 4-part assembly with like pretty loose tolerances that doesn't go 80 miles an hour with 5 people in it, like, it is so impressive that people make cars so successfully.
And for the cost.
Unbelievable.
So cheap.
Yeah.
For what it is.
Really mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like, especially with something so complex, I think leaving room for learning by not investing too much time or money is really useful. I think, to your point, like, you do need to know that there's a viable path toward like having a real business around something, right? Like if there's no way to get your margins right, maybe you need to reevaluate. But
and you see companies do that sometime as well, and you're like,
I'll make your parts for sure. I don't know.
I'm not planning on making more of them.
yeah, for sure. So some improvements. Well, really, I mean, I just have like one improvement, which is the sewing.
Yeah. Were you able to load the programs?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Last we talked, we were struggling with that. Okay. So this is it, which is exactly what I thought it would be. Something like this.
Naming conventions.
It had to be in a folder that was named something very particular. And we had it in a folder named something else.
Yeah.
From our dealer, who they were like, oh, put it in a folder that says this. They were wrong.
Oh. Interesting.
Anyway, so
how did you find that out?
Talk to Juki directly. We are running into an issue so we bought this sewing machine from a local supplier who, when we called them about the programming side of it, they're like, oh, it's a self-taught program.
Yeah.
And I was like, right. I wish it was.
Yeah.
Now we want to do some more advanced stuff, and we have no one to turn to or teach us
And the software is from Juki directly?
Software is from Juki.
And do you get any love from them or no?
We're going to try that next.
Yeah.
So I just called, there's sort of two, as far as I can tell, there's 2 people in the US who do this very well.
Wow.
And one of them is in New Jersey and the other one is in California.
Only 2?
No, there's others, but a lot of the others are sort of more like bread and butter stuff. Like it's sort of like make tons of production. I'm sure there's more than 2. There's 2 main ones who are like really, really deep in the weeds.
For writing programming and selling it with fixtures.
And like integrating 3 sewing machines onto one fixture that does like pretty wild stuff, or like the guy who built the machines that sew those Klein pouches I think we've talked about.
Yeah.
Like, you know, kind of.
There's probably a lot of people within manufacturing companies who do this, but you can't they're hard to find.
All day, every day. Yeah. Actually, now that you say that, that might be a better approach. Because what I'm struggling with now is we made a mistake buying a machine from a company that doesn't. Because I called the guy in New Jersey and he was like, look, like, yeah, if you buy a machine from me, like, I can help you with all this stuff, but like, this is my business. Like, I'm not just gonna, I don't know.
Right.
We'll see. So yeah, getting access to the information of how to do some of this stuff. Like, one of the things is the machine doesn't have any IO on the board, which is frustrating. It's not surprising, but it is frustrating. And
for like a sensor, like, what do you want to use IO for?
I want to add pneumatics to the fixturing, because the thought is right now it's going to be manually loaded, but the thought is that we could 3D print a bunch of fixtures that then get loaded into a chute, and then the machine just grabs the next one, pulls it in, sews on it, pushes it out.
I'm jumping right to problem solving again, but it's because it's fun.
Yeah, sure is.
What if you just forget about the machine as being smart and like you literally add a PLC and even just like have a pneumatic thing like push on the foot pedal?
Yeah, so I think that's going to be the answer. And honestly, longer term, I think it might make more sense anyway, because then if you change to a new sewing machine,
right,
your PLC is the same. You just have to figure out how to trigger a new machine.
Which, if it's a foot pedal still, is very easy.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually hilarious now that you say that, because I was thinking, like, how do you change programs? Like, how do you tell it to run a different program off of a PLC?
Oh.
But it does have 5 pre-programmable buttons, so I could put 5 actuators to just hit the buttons. They're digital buttons, of course, so it's tempting to, like, solder in a port that we could just turn high, but...
Right. Which might be the way, but it might be the not simple way, not the quick way.
Yeah, that's a thought. I hadn't thought of the actuate. I was looking through the wiring diagram to figure out like where we could tie in with the PLC. The thing is, I'm sure it's doable because a lot of these machines are on automated lines.
Yeah,
but it might be one of those things. I feel like you run into this every now and then. An industry where it is so focused on like big manufacturers where a new production line might have a budget of like whatever $100,000 in consultants to get the whole thing running, that it's like for you they're not trying to make it easy, they're not trying to make it flexible, they're just like, we build this thing and people seem to integrate it just fine, so we're not going to change. I feel like Brother sewing machines 100% like that. Brother CNCs, I feel like there's a bit of that vibe. Like, we build a tool and we don't have that much documentation, because anyone who's like the people we're really building it for, we spend 6 months with them working on their particular application.
Although their documentation is pretty dang good
on a lot of it. I've been frustrated with the PLC ladder documentation.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe it's out there. Someone send it to me.
Interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, that's basically all I've got. I mean, I'm trying to think. We had a few other improvements, but I'm not remembering what they were.
Yeah, I was gone pretty much the whole time since last episode recording.
Yeah.
So I didn't personally do much of anything. But it has been kind of cool just kind of touching back on the conversation last week about starting to, I feel like I want to believe that this will be sort of like getting a big rock rolling, and then once it's moving, it's going to move well.
Yeah.
In terms of getting everybody kind of in the mindset. And there hasn't been like big dramatic shifts, but it has been cool a few times. Like yesterday, both people who work with me came up and were kind of like, hey, I was thinking about this, or maybe maybe this is a place that would be a room for improvement, that I'm seeing a problem. And that was pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Actually, this might take me a second to find, but
cool. I will. We had someone write in. This is something I wanted to kind of touch on. or sent me a message or something, basically saying, they're enjoying the podcast. Thanks for putting it out. That it was great listening to people struggling through this stuff. And it sort of reminded me, like, I want to say it again. I feel like we said it early on, but I feel like it bears repeating. Like, we're not experts. And I think why we started this podcast was very much because it feels like there's a lack of content out there of people, like, struggling to implement these ideas rather than just, like, documenting their wins. Mm-hmm. And not documenting their wins. Like, I'm not trying to talk down to, like, all the shop tours are awesome. But a lot of the time people put out a shop tour once they're, like, very proud of their shop. And it's like, some of them are just so mind-blowing in their efficiency, in their cleanliness, in their systems, that it feels kind of daunting rather than, well, it's daunting and inspiring, but maybe sometimes more daunting. Like, you're like, I don't even know where to start. Like, that is so not where I'm at, that it's hard to get there. There's this idea of, like, proximal learning, where, like, the best teacher for you is someone who's, like, just slightly ahead of you rather than just, like, 10 years ahead of you. Because they're like, oh yeah, I remember struggling with that exact thing. We had this when we were running a startup. We had a board of advisors, and some of the advisors were, like, very impressive resume industry people. And they'd give us this advice, and we're like, what are we supposed to do with that? Like, they were, because a lot of it's like, we're in the trenches, and a lot of it's sort of like, hey, we're going to be raising this round, any idea, any, like, advice. And it's like, oh yeah, we did this, and here's a big thing we ran into, so you really want to watch out for this, and, like, make sure you get these things done now. And you're like, okay, great, noted, thank you. And so anyway, so thanks for the reminder to kind of stick with that goal of, like, sharing the process of, like, wrestling with these ideas, trying to implement them. They often conflict with each other, and anyway, hopefully it's enjoyable to listen to.
One little part that's directly applicable to improvement stuff out of Toyota Kata was the discussion about the action item list approach and how it is faulty. I don't know if you recall that part.
Remind me. Action item list.
Well, basically, the author is saying, like, if you go into any lean organization, you often see this, like, list of things that we need to work on. And how this is a bad approach. And I think we probably both have found ourselves in this, paradigm. And I think kind of the prognosis was, like, it's done because it's simple and it's, again, easy metrics. Like, you can cross stuff off the list. But again, that we need to, like, instead of being results oriented, we need to be process oriented. And that the more effective, when they got to the more effective approach, it was a little bit vague, to be honest. But the more effective thing is to, instead of just creating a list of things that you see as problems, or a list of things that you think should be improved, or like how you want to improve it or whatever, and crossing those things off, to instead sort of have, like, a series of experiments around an issue.
And this gets back to, like, as I recall, the target condition. It's sort of like, okay, we think this line should be doing things more this way. What stands between us and that goal? And then one of the questions I liked a lot is, like, when will we have results to be able to look at to know if we're closer or further away?
And one of the points driven home here is that they, at least at Toyota, strive to change only one variable at a time.
Womp womp.
And when you sort of, like, think through what this means, like, the implications of this is that they're doing lots of very, very small changes and then checking results. Versus trying to just, like, bust through a list.
Bust through a list, or I think there's also a temptation of, like, oh, we should automate this line. Okay, let's buy a robot and totally redo how we're making this line, instead of, like, what if we change this one tiny factor? What does that do to our reliability, or what does that do to our...
Anyway, it's kind of I think it's, like, very, very tempting to just start throwing stuff on a list and
I mean, that's what we've been doing. And I struggle with this sort of like, I hate to write off what we've done as like not the way to do it, because it got us here, which has been
effective. Yeah.
It's been effective in getting us involved in the process. Like, I feel like if you wait to be perfect and fully understand this stuff,
for sure,
it's not going to work. And so
you have to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere. And like some of those easy wins, I feel like maybe are a good place to start.
I think they are. I think the whole point of this book, right, is like what differentiates Toyota from a lot of other companies trying to do this. Like,
right.
There's all these companies that get 90% of the way there or whatever, but they're not seeing the same results. So what is the distinction?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this book's drilling into, right? And
right, that was the intro, essentially.
Yeah. And so there are many, many companies using this action item list method,
right,
getting a lot done.
Yeah. But
why are they not getting as much done as Toyota? That's the premise. And so it's kind of like, what are next steps? It's not that that's bad. It's that it may be slightly flawed. It's not as good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I would say it's also why we've been having these conversations for 2 years plus, is like, if it was just pretty simple and you figured it out, it would be like, all right, we figured it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is sort of an ongoing. I feel like every time I'm like, okay, I figured this out, there's like, oh, interesting now. There's a quote like, beyond mountains, there are mountains. It's like some Haitian proverb or something.
Interesting. I'm gonna look it up.
There's a book. With that title. By a public health doctor. But essentially, it's like you look at one mountain, but then if you climb over, you're gonna see more mountains.
Yeah. Beyond mountains, there are mountains.
Yeah. As you solve one problem, another will present itself. There you go. I remember visiting, what's it called? Like Sand Dune National Park. And there's just this enormous sand dune.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, that's pretty crazy. Let's climb to the top of it. And then we climbed to the top of it, and there's the same size sand dunes as far as the eye can see. And you're like, oh my God.
Wow.
We thought it was just like one big cone kind of thing with like some local smaller bumps on it. Anyway, so that's how it feels. Beyond mountains, there are mountains. Yeah. You like spend all this time climbing up one, and you're like, okay, I get it. It's going to be smaller batch sizes. We're going to be single piece flow. We're going to have no inventory. It's going to be awesome. And then it's like, oh, wow, production leveling is a thing. And theory of constraints is a thing. So maybe actually increasing inventories so that I can focus on other. I don't know. Yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyway. It might be a good place. Finish up for today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We appreciate it very much. Again, we launched a Patreon because that's what the cool kids do.
Exactly.
So go check it out. You can find me on Instagram at lichen_MFG and on the internet at lichenprecision.com.
And you can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg.com on the internets. And the podcast at Incremental CI. Love seeing people's improvements. And we try to repost everything. Sometimes I've been falling down on the job a few times, so apologies for that. But yeah, definitely fun to share and see how everyone's kind of moving things forward in their shop, so we can all share ideas and get better together. Till next time.
See you next week.